Week 1, Lesson 7. Rodolphe Töpffer. Rodolphe Töpffer was a Swiss teacher as well as a painter, author, and importantly to this course, a cartoonist. He created illustrated books, which are now considered Europe's earliest comics. Right now, we are going to take a quick look at one of the pages from his early comic. Here is the first page from a Histoire d'un vieux bois, or The Adventures of Obadiah Oldbuck, as it's known in English. What you're seeing here is a copy from the original manuscript, drawn in 1827. The language translates as this: "What do you want from me, shades of my ancestors?" And the shade responds back, "We wanted to greet you." On the next panel, we see the situation is reversed. "What do you want, O ugly descendant of ours?" "I came to see your funny faces," says the man to the shades. The bottom reads, Mr. Vieux's boys encounter. Mr. Vieux's boys watches with distress as the lady disappears. Mr. Vieux is in love. Okay, now this page isn't making much sense on its own, but let's deconstruct it for a moment. We have barriers between the pictures. Each drawing in the picture seems self-contained, at least in the sense that it's not flowing over into the next picture like the Bayeux tapestry was. We have panels and we have words within those panels. Having word in the panels is a huge jump in progress for the medium. What else do we see? On the two panels on the top of the page, there's a horizon line. This makes it a three-dimensional picture showing proper perspective, unlike the Egyptian paintings. Now, as we look at the panels, we see the first and second panel seem to stand on their own. They're not part of any larger story. They show how different individuals act to the spirits. One is afraid, one is amused. The story itself doesn't start until the third panel on the bottom row, which, if you look at the middle of the page, the story starts beneath the title. So, what does M. Vieux's boys' life have to do with the dead? Well, that's explained on the next page. Panel 1. The panel describes what is happening for us. Mr. Vieux's boys seeks distraction through studying. Okay, simple enough. We see him open a book, studying. But, in the second panel, we read, Mr. Vieux's boys senses the uselessness of his efforts. Now, he's leaning back, he's got his hand on his forehead like he has a headache. This panel is taking place in the exact same location as the previous panel. It's even shown from the same angle. On the third panel, there's a bit of a time slip. From the window, Mr. VB catches a glimpse of the beloved object. Now, this is a direct translation. What I think Rodolphe meant was the object of his affections. So, from the window, Mr. VB catches a glimpse of the object of his affections. There's a location change as well from the previous panels. This is an outdoor location Mr. Vieux's boys is seeing from his window. This lets the reader fill in the information using the clues the picture has given. This may seem obvious to us now, but when this first came out, it was unclear if people would understand this and notice the flow of the pictures and how they interacted with the words. At this point, the comic assumes to know who Mr. Vieux's boys is and just starts calling him Mr. VB. We have now seen him long enough we can identify him by his large chin and nose. On the bottom row, we get Panel 4. Mr. VB decides to write. Seems pretty self-explanatory. Panel 5. Dream of Mr. VB. Now we get something here we haven't seen before. He's sleeping in the bed. Above him are miniature figures. A man kneeling on one leg as he's kissing a woman's wrist. There is no barrier to show us that these pictures are in his dream. We know that he is dreaming because we are told that. so we assume that these figures are in his dream, and that he's not sleeping below some fairies. Panel 6 says, Desolation. Mr. VB gets no reply. Now, we see him crying on the same table he was studying on earlier. From his reaction to the lack of a reply, our minds now fill in what happened in panel 4. VB was writing a letter to the object of his desire. With this information, our minds piece together what it just read, and we are able to create a scene in our heads from the information that is presented to us on this page. Now, what does all this have to do with the ghosts on the first 2 panels of the story? Well, page 3 has the answers for us. Panel 1 reads, Mr. VB kills himself. Fortunately, the sword goes under his arm. Now we see a bit of humor going into the comic. VB stabbed himself, but he's just too much of an idiot that he misses. Panel 2 says, Mr. VB believes himself to be dead for 48 hours. Now we see VB laying on the ground. The sword is still under his arm, and the desk is knocked over. Our minds now retroactively make us envision him falling backwards and knocking over the desk. We don't have to waste a panel showing the moon coming up, because the words tell us everything we need to hear. On panel 3 it says, Emancipated in the extreme, Mr. VB comes back to existence. He is awake, severely weakened, but still alive. As we see in the bottom panels, he doesn't seem to be too shaken up about being alive. He just puts on some new clothes and starts chasing the woman again. Rodolphe Töpffer uses slapstick humor for the jokes, and realizes that's a visual medium as the story progresses. VB gets a larger head and a more detailed face. All of Töpffer's works are in public domain, so they're easy to find online, and if you don't mind doing some translating, I think you'll find that they hold up rather well. Now, to end this segment, here's a good clip from an underground comic book artist, Art Spiegelman, who we'll talk about later in this course, as he describes an influence that Rodolphe Töpffer had on him and the medium as a whole.
His essay on physiognomy and a very bad reproduction of one of his graphic novels was published, so that I began to see that there's somebody who had a deep understanding of what comics were. He understood that comics existed someplace between writing and drawing, and it was its own language. And it was so much a language that he wrote several essays on line, on autography, on photography and the difference between comics and photography, and he wrote about physiognomy, the signs of faces that are the basis of all of the caricaturist's alphabet. To me, this became profoundly important. I can make picture signs, and Töpffer is not only the granddaddy of comics, but the granddaddy of semiotics. He gave us a way to understand these things, so it became very important for me, and it shifted from the early history of comics books that I read that started with The Yellow Kid to Töpffer and showed me that there really was a European patrimony, a life that came before. Very different from the former notion, which was that the birth of comics started with The Yellow Kid.
Questions to contemplate. Do you think that Rodolphe Töpffer developed the first European comic? What is missing from the pages of Histoire d'un Vieux Bois, or The Adventures of Obadiah Oldbuck, in which we see in comics today?